Welcome back to this episode to do a deep dive into the expression versus the embodiment of the divine feminine. I mean, my research and experience of observation and channeling around the divine feminine has really been amping up in my focus and my attention in the last couple of years. And I feel like with the changes that the world is going through and maybe some of the destruction and the death that is occurring in the way in which we relate to each other and the way in which we want to build communities that we can all thrive in, we need to really face the truth about divine feminine energy so that we can empower ourselves to embodying it rather than just being surface level expressions of it. The concept of divine feminine is not new, and it's becoming increasingly popular, I think, because of this. And it is, I believe, often misunderstood or misrepresented. Many association of divine feminine is done purely through attributes of it. So you'll hear people talk about embodying the divine feminine nature through things like, flowing dresses or beauty rituals or soft speech and crystals and aesthetics and like an overall nurturing image. But true divine feminine energy is way more profound, transformative, and nuanced than this surface level expression. So what is divine feminine energy? Well, divine feminine energy is a universal source of energy that is available to all of us, regardless of your gender. And it represents the energetic principles of receptivity, intuition, creativity, emotional intelligence, and a deep spiritual connection. And associated qualities of this would be like intuition, compassion, nurturing, wisdom, emotional authenticity, inner knowing, allowing and receiving, and creativity and flow. But historically, feminine archetypes have been available to us, and they are a symbolic expression of this type of energy. So think about like Lakshmi, Aphrodite, or Mary Magdalene, kind of all exude the strength and the groundedness of divine feminine energy. But it is undeniable that cultural shifts from matriarchal societies that humans used to organize themselves under have been, replaced with patriarchal societies. So we've come from this wisdom-based culture to more logic-based systems. And there is a current rebalancing towards more feminine or divine feminine integration into society. And so this is why it's so important that we don't just become an expression of it, that we actually embody it in order to facilitate this integration. And so where we've come from has been, we have to acknowledge, it's been a downgraded and often victimhood experience of divine feminine, because the patriarch had to, in many ways, demonize it in order to rise and become the ruling way into this system logic-based approach to organizing our societies and cultures in which we live, function, work in. And so to do that, things like the witch trials or the suffragette movement has really demonized a lot of associated divine feminine qualities as less than or not desired, because you can't really run a patriarchy and have the divine feminine be worshipped. But the truth is that we all possess divine feminine as we do divine masculine. And like I said, the more we are able to really embody it authentically, then we can have an authentic balance between divine masculine and divine feminine within, but also within the wider experience of our society and our culture. And so as this divine feminine really begins to make a resurgence into our experience, why? Because women especially crave it. We are craving autonomy. We are craving that respect for the way in which we can naturally function very effectively and very generously within a society. Basically, the divine feminine is emerging because it's hearing the call. It wants to serve its purpose. And in order to feel out these qualities, because we've been so disconnected from them, because we've been put down for them, because we've been punished for them, we have to start, I guess, by a sort of expression. I look at the expression of the divine feminine as like a dipping your toe in the water. Like, what would it feel like on the outside? But it's time we did go deeper than the expression. And if you're like me and you are very deeply connected to yourself and you're evolving, then you'll be probably starting to get the ick with a lot of the expression of the divine feminine rather than the embodiment. So really the expression of divine femininity is an external kind of manifestation or a surface level representation of divine feminine energy. And so common examples of this in our culture that give me the ick certainly are things like when there's this heavy reliance on teaching women that their clothing choices will make them tap into their divine feminine nature, or that is the embodiment of it. So flowy dresses and jewelry and delicate aesthetics, makeup and beauty rituals tap into this. Spiritual symbolism, so things like crystals or goddess statues or sacred spaces that are an expression of divine feminine energy, but not really the embodiment of it. Feminine language, soft communication, and even feminine language that tries to be masculine. So things like girl boss, those types of phrases. And I've done a whole podcast on how girl boss culture is really toxic. And when we participate in ceremonial rituals and candles and incense, now I'm not demonizing any of this, because expression of the divine feminine nature can be really valuable because it serves as a visible reminder and connection point to the feminine energy. And it can also invoke and encourage an energetic shift towards divine feminine energy, such as softness and receptivity and connection. And it acts as a form of celebration and appreciation of divine feminine energy externally. But it is limited because our expressions of divine feminine can become performative or superficial if it is disconnected from authenticity. And I think as a collective, we are waking up. We are now in a new era astrologically, and the climate culturally and politically is calling us to wake up into a grounded expression of our authenticity. And so when I say the ick, you can see when there is an expression of divine feminine energy being performative and superficial, because you can tell a mile away when it's disconnected from authenticity. And I'm not demonizing anyone. I'm sure I have done it in the past, but basically it's like the call to more. It's also limited because there's this overemphasis on how external experiences can lead to the real work of integrating, embodying, and expressing divine feminine energy. Because the honest truth is, we have to go within to come to our own personal reckoning with the expression of our divine feminine after the embodiment of it. Last year I did 2 podcast episodes on healing the witch wound with Taylor Page. You can go back and find those. Such beautiful energy. And actually, having worked on healing my witch wound last year, I now am so drawn to the divine feminine embodiment of wisdom and magic that is internal, of actually using energetics as a powerful portal for change and protection and strengthening my way in the world. There's also a risk of reinforcing stereotypical or superficial understandings of divine feminine energy, and it loses the deeper transformative potential of the spiritual work and personal development that divine feminine energy invites us to explore. So when you have an expression of divine feminine that isn't grounded in authenticity, we're missing the juice, the gift that embodiment offers. Because when we embody divine feminine energy, it is a deeply internal experience. It is the integration of becoming the energy at the cellular, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical level of all the attributes of divine feminine energy. It is a felt experience in a person's energy, not just merely a seen appearance or style in approaching life. So the qualities of true embodiment of divine feminine energy include inner wisdom, a deep trust in your own intuitive knowings and inner voice. It is presence. It's the ability to remain grounded, fully attentive, and emotionally available. It's emotional intelligence to comfortably embrace vulnerability, authenticity, and a deep holding of emotions. Boundaries and sovereignty are huge with divine feminine energy, because when you embody it, you comfortably and clearly set boundaries. You have self-respect, and you have the ability to hold personal power compassionately. Flow and receptivity is allowing life to unfold gracefully without force. This is very divine feminine. It's trusting timing. It's surrendering the need to control life's outcomes. And rather, it's a playful time in the creativity and embodying the energy of creativity, which is an ongoing connection with the life force energy that inspires creation and innovation and manifestation or alignment from the heart. It is relational depth, the ability to cultivate deeply nourishing connections built on authenticity and emotions. So if you have an embodiment of divine feminine energy, then the signs are so clear, and this is where you can really begin to discern between a mere expression and an embodiment of divine feminine energy. Because when you are embodied in divine feminine energy, you have energetic magnetism. Others sense this depth, this warmth, this authenticity, and this presence. And decisions are guided by intuitive knowing rather than external validation. Personal authenticity takes priority above social expectations or surface appearances. And you have this powerful sense of self-love and self-compassion and self-awareness that radiates outward, rather than just exhibiting that you have these things and hoping that the world reflects that back to you and sees you for that. So it's important to be able to differentiate between the expression and the embodiment, because the expression of the divine feminine essence without embodiment can lead to spiritual bypassing, feeling inauthentic, and becoming disconnected from genuine transformation. Embodiment without allowing oneself to enjoy the expression might feel like overly serious or rigid, like you can do it wrong. And ideally, expression of the divine feminine naturally arises from the embodiment of it, so your inner energy, and authentically shapes how you express externally. Misunderstanding the divine feminine as strictly about experiences in terms of the appearance of it or the way in which you move through the world trivializes the profound spiritual energy and nature of divine feminine. And overly romanticizing the divine feminine expression without doing the inner work can leave you feeling empty and dissatisfied and disconnected from your own power. So, authenticity is the bridge between the two. An authentic expression naturally emerges of the divine feminine when you embody the divine feminine deeply. So ask, am I embodying what I'm expressing, or am I simply performing it? And how do you know if you're doing this? Well, here's some guidance around how you can begin to ask yourself this, but also cultivate the embodiment of divine feminine energy. Inner awareness is paramount. So inner awareness practices like meditation to connect with your intuition and your inner wisdom, journaling to explore emotional honesty and vulnerability. Somatic practices have been hugely instrumental in my relationship with my divine feminine essence and embodiment. Movement that really practices the integrative nature of the physical expression of the divine feminine: breathwork, dance, yoga. Whatever feels for you can be an expression of all those divine feminine qualities. Shadow work and integration. Well, this is where I started my own personal spiritual journey, and I will go back to it for the rest of my life because I know how deeply profound and helpful it is. Because when you can embrace your shadow aspects, you can heal the wounds around your worthiness, your self-love, your vulnerability, and your ability to receive, but also the fear that you may have around holding your own personal power. And unless that is all healed, then how can you authentically express yourself? You will stay in performative nature. You will stay within the constructs of what is told is acceptable in terms of how to express divine feminine energy. So you can't, I believe you cannot really be the embodiment of divine feminine energy unless you are integrating shadow work into your experience. And a new favorite, well, it's not a new favorite of mine, but one that I focus on lately is ritual and ceremony. I mean, historically, women holding rituals and being and sitting in ceremony is highly driven by our divine feminine nature. Intentional rituals that deepen and honor your connection with the divine feminine energy is going to massively help with the embodiment. So if you've been listening to me for a while and following me for a while, you will know that the key way I do this is working with the cycles of the moon. Why? Because I'm a woman and I am on a 29.5 day hormonal cycle as the moon is on a 29.5 day cycle. So it makes such perfect sense to honor the ebbs and flows of my human feminine nature with divine feminine energy. Things like cacao ceremonies, creative expression, or sacred sound baths. And that this is not in any way restricted to masculine and feminine in terms of who we are as human beings. This is energetic work. So as a man, when they sit with the cycles of the moon or they go to a cacao ceremony, they're also tapping into the power of their divine feminine energy within, which is so beautiful. It's like when I, step into my divine masculine, where I'm organized and where I can pursue, that's beautiful for me too. Authentic expression, by consciously choosing your expression, is going to help reflect this inner emergence of the embodiment of the divine feminine. So the things I mentioned before, language, clothing, the rituals that you perform in your day-to-day life that genuinely reflect the inner embodiment rather than the performative aesthetics of the divine feminine. So really it comes back down to intention and your why. Why am I dressing like this? Because it feels authentic to me, or because I'm hoping to evoke or present as the embodiment of the divine feminine? It's really about being honest with yourself and being okay with being honest with yourself. So I invite you really to reflect on your relationship with the expression and the embodiment of divine feminine energy. Are you currently in the expression, in the embodiment, or are you in both? And where can you perhaps find the space to deepen your relationship with divine feminine energy? Remember, authentic embodiment of the divine feminine energy is a lifelong journey, and it will always evolve. But try to embody some of the divine feminine attributes through thinking about what this energy means to you and how you can currently integrate embodiment practices into your life. Remember, you can express divine feminine energy for sure, and that can help be a gateway into embodiment. But when you are embodying divine feminine energy, the expression of it flows naturally. It's not performative. It is so authentic. And as we know, our portal of power is held and anchored in authenticity. When we are expressing authentically, whatever we're expressing, but when we are expressing authentically, we are going to align with the right people, places, circumstances, and opportunities. But when we are in performative mode, it can only ever be surface level because it's not anchored in truth. So I hope that you now have that contrasting picture of what it means to express divine feminine energy and what that may look like. And as you peruse social media or just life in general, start to observe where you feel drawn to in someone's divine feminine energy and where you feel repelled. And then internally, where you hold that within yourself. Because we all have the absolute birthright to tap into divine feminine energy, because it is such a portal of power and peace and grace and generosity to others. And it is also the portal through which we can receive so much as well. So as always, I'd love to hear how this hits or how you play with divine feminine energy in your life. You can head to our community group on Facebook, the Light Path Community, or of course comment on our socials or even DM me. I am always up for hearing your experiences, but also answering your questions on a one-to-one personal level. Sometimes people will shoot me a question on socials and I'm more than happy to answer it. But as always, I hope this deeper exploration has allowed you to begin a transformative experience, moving beyond surface level engagement into genuine embodied empowerment.